This is a Nightline Friday night special.
He was always on the phone, 1 minute with the Defense Secretary on Vietnam.
Now, on the Marines, the answer is yes if there's no other alternative.
The next with the governor of Alabama on a brewing civil rights battle.
When you talk about a revolution, that really upsets us all, and we don't want to. I know you don't, and I know I don't, and we just got to work together best we can to see that we discharge our duties.
Then rebuffing a prominent senator pushing for a pet project.
I'll sure try to do it, but God Almighty, don't you pick out the cross-eyed, stuttering, bow-legged girl and bring her up and say, now listen, this ought to be the beauty queen.
Tonight, the LBJ tapes. Arm twister, charmer, and master manipulator.
From ABC News, this is Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Lord knows we Americans love to beat up on our presidents. It's one of the unique joys and privileges of being a citizen of this country, that the least among us has the right to take verbal or written potshots at the commander-in-chief. We impugn his character, we second-guess his decisions, we ridicule his looks or his regional dialect. It is the price we extract from any man who has the hubris to believe that he can lead this republic for a few years. We should probably say thank you a little more often than we do. You'll have a better sense why after this broadcast tonight. For reasons known best to himself, Lyndon Baines Johnson ordered the installation of recording devices that were activated on his phone calls in the Oval Office, in his bedroom down on the LBJ Ranch in Texas, and on a portable phone that he took with him on the road. There are hundreds of hours of phone conversations recorded during his presidency that are now being analyzed at the LBJ Library in Austin. The latest batch, released only today, covers the period of January through March of 1965. And what emerges is an amazing oral tapestry of what the presidency demands. Agonizing one moment over the expanding war in Vietnam, dealing the next with a developing civil rights crisis in Selma, Alabama. A call from Martin Luther King Jr. pressing for a black cabinet member, alternately stroking and bullying reporters and politicians. Jackie Kennedy on one line, Harry Truman or Adam Clayton Powell on another. History sorts these conversations into neat, manageable categories. The presidency requires an ability to constantly juggle them interchangeably. It is, as you will hear, an impossibly demanding job, the dimensions of which are only hinted at in these extraordinary tapes. It is January of 1965. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. calls the White House hoping to persuade the president to name a black cabinet member. LBJ has his own agenda.
We have a strong feeling that it would mean so much first the health of our whole democracy, but to the Negro and to the nation to have a Negro in the cabinet before this really be a great step forward for the nation, for the Negro, for our international image, and do so much to give many people a lift who need a lift now. I agree with that, and I'm going to, I don't want to make a commitment on it because I don't want to get tied down to the Congress, but I'm going to shove as strong as I can to get the biggest department there, housing, urban affairs, city, transportation, everything that comes in that department that involves the urban areas of America into one department. And then if I can get that done without having to commit one way or the other, my hope would be that I could put the man in there. I think that we don't want special privilege for anybody. We want equality for all, and we can stand on that principle. But I think if you can contribute a great deal by getting your leaders and you yourself taking very simple examples of discrimination where a man's got to memorize Longfellow, whether he's got to quote the first 10 amendments, and some people don't have to do that. But when a Negro comes in, he's got to do it. And if we can just repeat and repeat and repeat, I don't want to follow Hitler, but he had an idea that if you just take a simple thing and repeat it often enough, even if it wasn't true, why people accept it. Well, now this is true, and if you can find the worst condition that you run into in Alabama, Mississippi, or Louisiana, or South Carolina, and if you just take that one illustration and get it on radio and get it on television, get it on in the pulpits, get it in the meetings, get it every place you can, pretty soon the fellow that didn't do anything but drive a tractor will say, well, that's not right, that's not fair. And then that will help us on what we're going to shove through in the end.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that.
The two things you do for us now, you find the most ridiculous illustration you can on voting and point it up and repeat it and get everybody else to it. Second thing is, please look at that Labor Committee in the House and Senate. Please look at that Health Committee. Please look at that Immigration Committee. And let's us try to get health and education and poverty through the first 90 days.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be done. That just depends on our absolute support.
The president is clearly committed to the cause of civil rights, if not yet ready to name a black cabinet officer. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. seems satisfied with the conversation. Just 2 months later, though, Johnson is on the phone with Senator John McClellan of Arkansas. LBJ is still pushing for progress in the field of civil rights, but the tone is markedly different.
And this damn world's shifting and changing so fast, and we're changing. I got 38% of these young Negro boys that are out on the streets. They got no school to go to and no job. And by God, I just scared to death what's going to happen in June and July. You know, when you were 17, 18, I ran off to California. Didn't think my daddy had any sense from Texas when I was a boy 16. But you take an old hard-pecked boy that sits around and got no school and got no job and got no work and got no discipline. His daddy's probably on relief and his mama's probably taking morphine. Yeah. Why, he ain't got nothing hurt if he gets shot. I mean, he's better off dead than he is where he is.
You lose, but his livelihood isn't worth sparing.
That's right.
A little later on, you'll hear Jackie Kennedy get a call from the president. Next, though, Mr. Johnson calls on two of his predecessors for advice on Vietnam.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Sears.
Now hear this, big swimwear and short sale at Sears. As in big savings on suits for the whole family. Just in time for summer. And hey, you gotta get out of the pool sometime, so all shorts are 25 to 40% off. It's all part of the big Memorial Day weekend sale. It's only through Monday, so last one into Sears is a rotten egg. Sears, a good life at a great price. Guaranteed.
Hard to believe Daddy's gonna be 70.
He looks good. Must be all that clean living.
Yeah, right. 70. Think about all he's seen.
He's never seen Walt Disney World.
This year, come celebrate milestones together at a year-long Millennium Celebration your family will never forget. Make your plans at DisneyWorld.com.
Well, young blood, now I've seen everything.
But I haven't. Come on.
My dad.
Not the same as killing a man.
Sylvester Stallone, Antonio Banderas, Julianne Moore. Assassins, ABC Saturday. Parental discretion advised.
Nissan's pre-Memorial Day event was such a success, and if you missed it, you're getting another chance. Due to special allocations from the factory, we're extending our hours for 8 days to bring you incredible deals on Nissan's top-selling models. The 2000 Maxima, with what may be the best V6 engine ever, Motor Trend Sport Utility of the Year, Xterra, and Frontier Crew Cab that tows up to 5,000 pounds. With great lease deals and APR financing available. Don't miss it. See your Middle Tennessee Nissan retailer today.
When a new month begins at most wireless providers, it seems the first order of business is to throw away your unused minutes from the month before. But at Bell South Mobility, we do things a little differently. Your unused package minutes roll over to the next month. Introducing Rollover Minutes, only from Bell South Mobility, where we feature Ericsson digital phones. They're your minutes. Keep them.
January 13th, 1965, President Johnson is talking to his Defense Secretary, Robert McNamara, fuming over reports being carried by powerful newspaper columnists to the effect that he, Johnson, is blaming the Vietnam War on his predecessor, John F. Kennedy.
The Kennedy crowd decided that I had framed up to get to Armed Services, the Senate, to call McCone to put the Vietnam War on Kennedy's tomb, and that I had a conspiracy going on to show that it was Kennedy's immaturity and poor judgment that originally led us into this thing, and that his execution of it had brought havoc to the country. I considered myself responsible for every decision made by Kennedy, and right down to that day in Dallas.
It's now a month later, mid-February '65, and the war in Vietnam is escalating. An intensive daily bombing campaign, codenamed Rolling Thunder, has begun. On the night of February 15th, Johnson reaches out to two former presidents for advice. For the time being, at least, he wants the contacts to remain private.
General, I want to visit with you in the next day or so on our problems out in Southeast Asia, and
well, of course, I could do anything of that kind, yes.
I don't want to put it up like we're in deep trouble, because I don't think it's reached that point. I'm a little concerned about leaving the appearance that we got an emergency or something.
I see.
President Truman on the line, sir.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. How are you?
Oh, I'm having hell.
What's the trouble?
Well, I got a little bit in the Congress, and a little bit with the Indochina, the Vietnamese, and a little bit all over the country, and I just thought I'd call you and try to get a little advice and a little inspiration. And I've been reading history and saw how much hell you had. You handled it pretty good. I just thought maybe I could learn something from you.
Well, I think you're handling it pretty good, too.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I'd like to have you come up here and spend a night with me.
All right, I'll see if I can't do that.
Nobody needs to see you. You don't have to make any presentation. Don't have to raise any hell. We'll just go in there and we'll have a drink or two together, and then we'll go to church.
March 6, 1965, the president calls his old friend Richard Russell, who is chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Russell suffers from chronic emphysema, and LBJ knows how to make a friend feel better.
Rick, haven't got anybody left like you. And I said more prayers about you than I have said since Lady Bird threatened to divorce me 2 years after we were married. And
Russell is a dominant force in the Senate, and LBJ needs his help in bringing another powerful senator, John Stennis of Mississippi, on board for a major escalation in Vietnam. Johnson is about to send in the Marines.
And all the military and all the Joint Chiefs and all everybody, including McNamara and Rusk. And I told them to clear with everybody, and they cleared everybody but Stennis. I guess we got no choice, but it scares the death out of me. I think everybody's going to think we land in the Marines, we're off to a battle. And Dick, the great trouble I'm under, a man can fight if he can see daylight down the road somewhere. But there ain't no daylight in Vietnam. There's not a bit.
There's no end of the road. There's just nothing.
The more bombs you drop, the more nations you scare, the more people you make mad, the more embassies you get painted.
We're going to wind up with the people mad as hell with us that we're saving by being in there. It's just awful.
Well, they'd say I inherited, be lucky, but they'll all say I created after another day.
Johnson knows that committing the Marines to Vietnam is going to be highly controversial. A few hours later, he's on the phone again with his Defense Secretary, Robert McNamara.
Now, on the Marines, the answer is yes if there's no other alternative. But the psychological impact of the Marines are coming is going to be a bad one. And I know enough about to know that. And I know that every mother is going to say, this is it.
Here at home, one of the pressing concerns was how to deal with demonstrations in Selma, Alabama. That and historian Michael Beschloss when we come back.
Get DirecTV and get 2 months of 32 premium movie channels. And you'll also get 25 specialty sports networks free. There's something for everyone, so what's not to like? DirecTV, now with local channels.
Can't get to the post office? Now the post office is wherever you are.
Their eyes locked. He began to kiss her. Suddenly, she pushed him away.
What is wrong?
He asked.
Oh, Nick. My portfolio is totally unbalanced. 3 of my mutual funds are underperforming.
And I've been far too concentrated in small cap stocks.
You can always tell an investor who's had a Schwab portfolio consultation. It's an objective evaluation that tells you how you're doing and whether you could do better.
She spun around. If you don't understand portfolio allocation, Nick.
You don't understand me.
Hey, I love you.
That new boss is from another planet.
Totally spaced out at that meeting.
Hey, what's that on your desk?
ABCnews.com. Ready when you are.
Hi, News 2's Neil Orn with Blackhawks' Henry Paul.
Join us for the Uncle Bud's Kids Cafe Invitational here at the Hermitage Golf Course.
Funds raised benefit Kids Cafe, providing nutritional meals to at-risk children in an environment that is safe, friendly, and within their neighborhood.
Enter today and join these fine sponsors on the course.
Join us for the fun.
And help support the Kids Cafe.
At the Uncle Bud's Kids Cafe Invitational, June 13th. Call 361-7302, extension 106 for details.
National Inventory Disposal. For 4 days only this Friday through Monday, Performance Ford in Nashville has been selected as an award-winning dealer to participate in a $1 billion national inventory disposal. To maintain manufacturer production, these dealers have been selected to eliminate 20,000 vehicles in excess inventory. Performance Ford has been authorized to offer major price concessions with millions of dollars in customer incentive monies made available by manufacturers. Only at Performance Ford at 5500 Charlotte Avenue. Sale ends Monday, May 29th.
It is March of '65. Martin Luther King Jr. has been leading a voter registration drive in Dallas County, Alabama. There's been a bad confrontation between protesters and police at a town called Selma. Police used clubs, tear gas, and cattle prods to break up a civil rights march there. Now, there are more marches planned, and President Johnson, fearing even worse trouble, places a call to Alabama Senator Lister Hill, looking for advice on how to handle the governor, George Wallace.
This is just between you and me. I just want some good advice. This fellow sent out wires all over the United States, King has, asking everybody to come in there for the march tomorrow. Our basic difficulty is we have no communication with Wallace at all. We don't know how to talk to him, and I think he feels kind of, left out, and we kind of feel like we're not close enough to talk, and so.
May I say something very confidential?
Yeah.
I think one thing there is, you remember what he did at the University of Alabama?
Yeah.
after they had admitted that student at Oxford and sent in the federal troops.
Yeah.
Why, he had a court order to admit one at the University of Alabama. He went there and stood in the doorway and wouldn't let anybody come in until the federal troops.
Yeah.
In other words, he wanted to show the people of Alabama he fought to the bitter end. See what I mean?
That's right.
That's what's up against down there.
By March 9th, conditions in Selma have gone from bad to worse. Governor Wallace has called LBJ to complain about how his state is besieged by protesters and bearded beatniks. LBJ tries to get him to agree on calling out the Guard or accepting federal troops to assure a peaceful march from Selma to Montgomery that King and his forces have proposed.
Governor, the court has acted now, and obviously the longer the march is postponed, the more problem you're going to have, and the more problem I'm going to have, and the more problem the country is going to have. Well, don't you think we ought to act before it gets beyond where we can?
Well, it's not in any such condition as that now.
I thought you felt like it. We ought to have some guard called up.
Well, I've got the Guard alerted. And let's see about when the march takes place. We're not worried about the march itself so much. We're going to be able to handle that.
I intend to call on the President of the United States to provide sufficient civil authorities or officers for the safety and welfare of citizens in and along the route of the proposed march.
LBJ is furious, feels he's been double-crossed by Wallace, who's now calling for troops when he'd previously turned down the president's offer to send them. LBJ calls Tennessee Governor Buford Ellington, who's been acting as a go-between for the White House and Wallace.
You're dealing with a very treacherous guy, and you all just must not even come in quoting him anymore, because he's a no-good son of a bitch. I'm not going to be double-crossed this one.
On March 21st, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., thousands of civil rights protesters begin a 55-mile-long march from Selma to the Alabama state capitol in Montgomery. And joining us once again, presidential historian and ABC analyst Michael Beschloss. It can be confusing listening to Johnson when he's talking to his white Southern senatorial friends. He sounds like a good old boy from the South. When he's talking to Martin Luther King, for example, he sounds like the great civil libertarian that I think he sometimes wanted to be. Which was he?
He was both. He was both someone who wanted rights for black Americans, and he was also a Southerner who had a lot of desire for law and order. And the beauty was that he was able to say both to each group in a way that was genuine and helped to convince both that he really meant what he was saying.
Devious or just ultimately pragmatic?
Oh, I think devious, but devious in the service of higher purposes, and that's what historians look for. If this was just for himself, we'd criticize him, but as you look at these tapes, this was in the service of things like doing work against poverty and for education, for health. Those are the kind of things that we really look for in a president.
There's that extraordinary moment where he's talking to Senator Richard Russell, and Russell talks about Vietnam as sort of an inheritance, and Johnson almost wistfully says, I hope that's how they see it, as an inheritance and not as something that I created. How is he seen ultimately?
He's seen as someone who inherited 18,000 Americans in Vietnam from John Kennedy. And the irony that comes out on these tapes is that what Johnson is very worried about is if he pulls out of Vietnam, the person who's going to denounce him is, of all people, Bobby Kennedy, whom we now remember as the enemy of the Vietnam War. He was worried that if Johnson was worried that if he pulled out of Vietnam, RFK would say, you have betrayed my brother's memory.
Just in a couple of seconds, Michael, now that you look back from 35 years distance, good president, great president?
I think near great, and what breaks your heart is that it was Vietnam that kept him from being a fully great president. I think if it had not been for that war, we would see him as the equal of almost any great president we can think of.
Michael Beschloss, many thanks.
My pleasure.
When we come back, one more piece of tape, a call to Jackie Kennedy.
Well?
I asked my doctor about Lipitor.
Ask your doctor what Lipitor can do for you, or call 1-888-LIPITOR to learn more. Lipitor.
I want to thank the people at the food bank for all the food you've been bringing me, especially the tangerines. I've been sick, and they've been a wonderful surprise.
The Philip Morris family of companies, including Kraft Foods, has been a leader in the fight against hunger for over 20 years. After all, who's better suited to feed the hungry than America's largest food company? Working to make a difference, the people of Philip Morris.
How do you furnish a room with a ceiling made of sky? The affordably priced home and garden collections from Ethan Allen. Because the most beautiful place in your home may not be in your home at all. The sale ends Memorial Day.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Millions will be watching from around the globe.
Michael Jackson, Mariah Carey, the Goo Goo Dolls.
The world's hottest music and biggest stars.
Ricky Martin, Savage Garden, Lou Bega.
A little bit of Monica in my life. It's a night that will rock the world. Al McPherson and Mark McGrath host from Monaco. The World Music Awards, Monday, 8/7 Central on ABC.
Why do warehouse clubs and superstores usually have the lowest prices? Because they sell in volume.
At CarMax, the auto superstore, we have the highest volume used car stores in the country.
So we can offer below Blue Book prices on most cars.
Discover the CarMax difference today.
Looking for a fast, easy way to sell your car? Bring it to CarMax. We make selling a car as easy and hassle-free as buying a CarMax car. In fact, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy ours. Discover the CarMax difference today.
Just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, is Wallace Simpson's place. He can't tell you why he builds these things, but then again, when the wind blows, he doesn't have to. And down the road at La Quinta, we've got an art of our own, a friendly style that means generous rooms with all the extras. At every La Quinta, every time. So if you're ever in Raleigh, look for Wallace's place, and then stop over and spend the night at ours. Now, when you catch some Z's at La Quinta, you could catch the athletes in Sydney. Ask for details.
March 1965, and Lyndon Johnson has another delicate situation to handle. Jackie Kennedy has been asked to attend the dedication of an acre of British soil to the memory of the late president. Jackie is happy to go, but she is reluctant to travel on the same plane that carried her husband's body back from Dallas.
I wanted to, I just heard that you were going to probably go to the memorial to the president, Magna Carta at Runnymede, and I wanted to suggest that if you cared to, that you and your party take one of the 707s.
So nice, but that's wasting taxpayers' money.
No, it's not at all. It's very important to us and very important to the country, and you just let me know how you feel after you have a chance to think about it.
Oh, listen, I just don't know what to say.
You don't say anything.
It's the nicest thing I ever heard of.
3 days later, Jackie Kennedy sent a letter of thanks to President Johnson. She wrote, "I thought for 2 days before writing to you because I did not know if I could steel myself to go in one of those planes again. But please do not let it be Air Force One, and please let it be the 707 that looks least like Air Force One inside. With my good wishes always, affectionately, Jackie." You can read the full letter and hear fresh excerpts of these tapes on our website, abcnews.com. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
You can order a transcript or video cassette of this or any other Nightline broadcast by dialing 1-800-CALL-ABC or visiting abcnewsstore.com on the World Wide Web.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.